CMPRadio.net. It's the station. CMPRadio.net, the voice of Chester.
Welcome to the It Show. My name is Stacey Mandel, and I can't wait to introduce you to my guest in just a few minutes. But this is the It Show. It's in it together. And the reason why I wanted to have a show called the It Show and explore this concept of what it's like to be in it together is because we have some interesting statistics in Delco. In particular, Delaware County is in the top 7% of the wealthiest counties in the nation. But at the same time, Delaware County has two towns that are the poorest in the state of Pennsylvania, and has two towns that are in the top 25, quote unquote, most dangerous in the nation. So how exactly are we in it together, right? So without further ado, I want to introduce my guest here so that we can explore this and also weave in some concepts of mindfulness to reimagine these possibilities. This is Councilmember Roots, and welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome, Stefan Roots.
Perfect.
Yes. How are you today?
I've heard Steve. I've heard Stefan.
Okay. I have to admit, I just panicked for a second. I don't know if you saw. I went council member, and I went, wait a minute.
Well,
how am I
pronounced so
it?
many different ways. It's spelled so many different ways. I have to be really tolerant on any way. But I don't get upset because I'm the guy when I order takeout, or if I'm going to come pick up a meal, what name do we put on it? And I always say Steve, so I don't get the how do you spell it? So okay. I'm often Steve.
But it is technically Stefan?
Yes.
Okay, yes.
Definitely. That's right. The government name.
Okay. Well, welcome.
Thank you.
Before we discuss more about what you do and some of your ideas, can you make a comment about those statistics?
Sure. That's a very important statistic that you mentioned. So 7, give it to me again.
Delco is in the top 7% of the wealthiest counties in the entire country.
Yes.
But 2 of the towns in Delco are the poorest in PA, and 2 of them are on the top 25 most dangerous in the country.
Mm-hmm. All right, so a couple things to glean from those numbers. It's obviously purposeful that the lower income people are funneled into these 2 municipalities, basically. You know, Chester being one of them, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Yeah. Chester, often or sometimes called the armpit of Delaware County. You know, we're down there in that bottom corner. Why is that? Well, some of the municipalities, we'll talk about Delaware County only, have zoning restrictions that don't allow for low-income housing. They don't allow for even apartments. And if I were to throw a name out there, Chadds Ford is one of those communities. Like someone asked me one time, do you know why they have only $1 million homes in Chadds Ford? And I'm thinking for a clever answer, and the answer was because they only want $1 million homes in Chadds Ford. So that's an issue. You know, we could easily disperse the people across the county equitably without having an impact. It would improve on education, it would improve on health outcomes, it would improve on just people having a different perspective of what life could be about. Since that's not going to happen tomorrow, folks in communities like Chester, like Upper Darby, we have to, as elected officials in particular and as leaders, we have to empower the poor. We cannot ignore them. We cannot allow them to have a lesser lifestyle than anyone else. We have to focus on the fact that we are in, like a city of Chester, where Statistically, 33% of the population is below the poverty line. That's more than Philadelphia, that claims to be the poorest big city in America. So we have to pay attention, we have to focus, we have to bring resources to the people that are here, and we have to, I'm pointing the finger now at those of you who can help this city rise up from what I'm calling rock bottom right now. We're in bankruptcy. We're in bankruptcy. There's plenty of room for everybody to exist here in Chester. It used to be a town of 70,000 people. Now we're down to 35,000. When I think about the late 40s, early 50s, all through the 50s, Sunship company down there, which employed a lot of people, they employed numerically, every man, woman, and child in Chester today. That's hard to imagine. That 35,000 people worked at one facility and lived well. The facility not only paid people well, but they also provided housing. So there's Sun Hill, there's Sun Village. Those were connected to the Sun Shipbuilding. Those houses are still there. They're very old right now. They need to be reimagined, not just renovated. The whole neighborhoods need to be reimagined. Some of the public housing that we have in our town, you go to a place like our Bennett homes, as we call it, the housing development or projects, you go through there, half of them are boarded up. If we're going to empower the poor, we have to give them a place to live. And to go through places where poor people generally live and see half of them boarded up, we're not really keeping the eye on the ball here. So those statistics are real. Those statistics can change, but the bottom line is it affects people. And that's what my focus is focusing on the people that are these statistics and not just the statistics.
Yeah.
Oh, I get it. Thanks, y'all. Y'all clapping out there too?
It was a heartfelt answer. So I wanted to just take a pause because I was listening to you and noticing, and I don't live in Chester. I live in Philadelphia, but I've worked in Chester for the past few years with youth, and I'm connected to people in the community. And I still have a real emotional reaction as I listen to you. There's a lot of emotions, and I don't know if people at home what they're feeling when you talk about the reality and the cause and effect, that you mentioned. So I just wanted to offer a little practice, a brief mindfulness practice. Mindfulness, the word itself just means paying attention to the present moment with kindness and curiosity, basically. So it's just a way of paying attention. So I'm just going to guide us in a real short practice so that we can just kind of pause and, like anything in life, proceed and not have our emotions necessarily overtake us. So however you are, wherever you are, if you could just pause and just notice your body. If you're sitting connected against the structure, or if you're standing, you can notice your feet on the floor, on the ground, and feel that connection. And then I invite you to just simply bring your awareness to your own thoughts, if there are any. It might just be mental activity. And then shifting your attention to your emotions, your feelings, or maybe just a mood state that's present. Just noticing. And then shifting your attention to your physical body. Are there any areas communicating with you? And as you do this practice, you might notice that it might be helpful to take a deeper, slower inhale and exhale to kind of move some energy. Emotions are energy. You might want to invite certain areas of your body. If you notice that they're tight or tense, you can often invite them to soften and relax. Could just be a little shoulder drop. Inviting the forehead to be smooth. And then just sitting still for another moment, just to be exactly as you are. And then coming back to this show and to our surroundings. So thank you for doing that with me, or even if you didn't do it, for being patient.
That's fascinating. I love that.
Why is it fascinating?
Because we don't do enough of it, because we don't know that it's something to do, number one. So it takes somebody like you who can guide us through that process. But I can tell you, my very first time of what we would call stress management was in college. I went to Villanova, but I wasn't that student that would have qualified under normal Villanova requirements. So there was a program that kind of took those of us with good grades, we can do a good essay, we did community work, we interviewed well, we looked like decent people, and they brought us in, but they surrounded us with support. And one of the levels of support was a young lady named Pat Kobus. I'm gonna shout you out, Pat, if you're out there listening.
I know Pat.
You think you know Pat?
I think I do.
And she would put us through these exercises for mindfulness, or as it was called then, stress reduction.
Mindfulness-based stress reduction, MBSR, is the common term.
See that? She's an expert. And what was fascinating to me was, I was like, what's stress? Like, I don't have stress. I've never been stressed. Not knowing that I was as stressed as probably ever in my life, during that period. So the exercises that she put us through were very similar to what we did. They were sometimes hours long. Yeah. And after it was over, I was like, well, I did it. I gave it my all. I don't feel any differently. And it was many years afterwards when I really felt stress, as an adult, working corporate life, raising families, things going wrong. I resorted back to all those exercises, laying on the floor, just, closing, just remembering those moments. So to experience it again right now, it took me right back to 1978, 79.
And this is why we're all in it together, exactly for this reason, because we're all offering things to each other all the time, and it's really valuable. And we might hear something if we're just paying attention and being open, right, and not judgmental. We might hear something that we could really take in, and it might land in us in a really meaningful, authentic way. So I appreciate you offering that reflection to everyone. What I offered you and what I was offering you all wasn't rocket science, right? It wasn't novel. It just happened to be just that I happened to be here in this particular moment, and it landed in a certain way. And that's what I love about mindfulness too, is that any one of us, all of us, know what it is, and we were all born with the capacity to pay attention in this way. We just need to remember. And actually, the word mindfulness, the ancient Sanskrit word, means to remember or to return, which is also kind of fascinating. All right, so moving on.
Let's do it.
Moving on up. How about your role as a councilman? Well, I have to say congratulations. It would be remiss of me. Congratulations on your primary win.
Thank you.
Yes, so the way I understand it too is that since there is no Republican nominee, you probably will be the mayor of Chester.
Probably is the best word.
Okay, so you're welcome to address any and all of that. However you'd like.
Well, I always like to start off this one with a conversation I had with some 9, 10, 11-year-olds last summer. And I said, do you guys know what a mayor is? And they all seem to know what a mayor is. But do you know what a city council person is? And they were like, I don't know. And then one kid just raised his hand and he says, I bet a city council person is like Santa's helper. And it was such a perfect analogy. I was like, yes, that's what we are. We're sort of like Santa's helper, but we all help each other. It's a body of 5 in Chester city government, the mayor and 4 council people. He kind of serves as a council person himself, but has some added responsibilities as mayor, as he should. I became a council person first term. I'm a freshman council person, as they call it. I've
So
been
how
at
long
it.
is that term?
It's a 4-year term.
That's what I thought.
But I joined 2 years ago, January 2021. So I was elected. I was put in office then, and then chose to run for mayor. So in January 2024, so I'm wrong. I joined council I had got elected 2021. That's November. These years really go fast. Took office January 2022. Okay. So now we're going to be in office as mayor if we get through November's election in 2024.
Why did you choose to run for mayor?
Well, it really wasn't a choice. It's what we set out to do when we made the decision to get into local government in the first place. It just happened that that decision was made, over 3 years ago. And before this opportunity to run for mayor came up, there was a council election. So it was just a matter of, hey, do we want to put a team together now and run for council? If we win, great. If we lose, we at least got the ball rolling, got it started. So to win and convincingly win, for council kind of gave us a lot of confidence in knowing that our calculus for running for mayor was probably well thought out and would be well received. And based on the results that we had in this mayor's election, we were spot on.
Yeah, I'm a little naive when it comes to politics.
I was too. I mean, as far as participating in politics, the naivety is, it's slowly wearing off. A lot of this is still new to me. But what's great is that it's local, it's hyper-local. It's right here in this town. I don't have to worry about state matters or even national matters. I'm pretty familiar with what goes on in the city. I'm very familiar with how to run a business. I have a lot of connections that can support me in that matter. So to run the city like a business for the citizens that I've grown up with, love, adore, and would like to see have a come up, not just the people of the city, the youth of the city, but the city itself. All the opportunity is perfect.
So you feel confident about the role that you're stepping into?
I feel confident that I can make a change in this town, and that's what people elected me for. They know this city needs to go in a different direction. It would have been ideal. Well, maybe not ideal in the sense of making the election results the way they were, but you would assume that there's others who want to see change in Chester and know that government is the way to make it happen.
Well, I was going to ask you.
It wasn't like the President of the United States or even Philadelphia, which has 9, 10, 11 nominees, in a party. In Chester, it was just three of us, going for it. So. Well,
when this was set up a few years ago, and you kind of described, how it works. I mean, you didn't have to be a politician, and I know you also do a lot of journalism, which we'll get into. I mean, what made you? Was it the love of your city? I mean, growing up here, like what makes you want to do this really complicated, difficult, exhausting, never-ending, messy work?
Primarily because I know I can fix it. I know I can make an impact. But you touched on all of it. Some of it is growing up in the city and remembering what it was like being a child in the city and just how fun and rewarding and exciting it was. There were the school districts were in much better shape. There was a lot of recreation activities. There were less conflict between neighborhoods. So I remember it as a kid. As an adult, having stayed close to Chester for a number of years before I finally just flew away and went to Denver for 5 years and then New York for 3. My parents are still here, so I would stay closely connected to what was going on in town. But it's what you touched on a little bit. It was the community journalism piece that started in 2006, which kept me right on top of every issue that was coming out of City Hall, the school district, the streets, the sports.
Can you back up for a second? Because I wanted to ask you, how did that start?
How did what
the
start?
journalism start?
Oh,
the
it was
media,
easy.
your various projects.
Yeah, I guess journalism really started in college. I went to school for engineering, but when I talked about that wraparound support that we had to take English courses. It was required. But through that wraparound service, there were only two professors. There were two professors that we had to take. They were part of the program. And one of them, Tom Martinez, was my English teacher. And after writing a couple reviews from going to plays on campus or going to see boys from Brazil at the movies, and we had to write reviews, he came up to me and says, why are you an engineer? Why are you trying to go through engineering? You should be a writer. Huh. And I was kind of taken aback by that because I didn't know writers could even make money. I was like, I know what engineering is, and I know what careers you can have, and I know that very few blacks are going into the field then and now. So that was really my reason for getting in. That was my only focus. I was really tunnel vision, but he put the spark in me that you can write better than the average bear out here. Again, not knowing what writing was, that there was a career in writing, I ignored it. Fast forward maybe 20 years, I'm being fired, I'm being laid off everywhere I go. It was just a bad period in America for corporate jobs, and I was just getting bounced around. I came back to Chester. The first job I got was with the Delaware County Daily Times, not as a writer, but in advertising. But I learned how newspapers got laid out and assembled. I only worked there for 10 months before being fired, and I was angry. Angry. I said, you fired the wrong guy. I'm going to show you. I'm going to start my own paper in my hometown because my hometown keeps telling you guys that you only put the bad news in the paper. I'm going to be the good newspaper. So it was sort of a vengeance project that the people in Chester loved. I had no intent of going 48 months straight putting out a paper version of the paper. And ironically, as the newspaper industry started going down, I was really at the start of that. The editor for the Delaware County Daily Times put the word out that we're going to start blogging as a paper, but we're not going to do it with our staff because our staff is decimated now. We want to go to every municipality and give you guys an opportunity to represent your municipality. So I raised my hand and I says, I'll do Chester.
Wait, pause for a second. Sorry, were you making money off of this?
No, never made money, never monetized. I made money on the paper because I sold advertising. It wasn't a lot of money. It was walk around money. If I knew the paper would have lasted as long as it did, I would have formed it in a more sustainable type of a model that I could monetize. But it was truly a labor of love. It was a weekend a month, just putting the blinders on, telling people don't call, don't come over. I've got to put out a paper that I got to get to the printer on Monday, pick up on Thursday, and start distributing on Friday, and then go collecting money the rest of the month.
Side hustle, passion, yeah.
But I guess they say for writers, no writer likes to write, but they like to have written. Now, I just wanted to be a publisher. I just wanted you to submit a story, the school district, the city. I just thought I'd give you 16 blank pages and people would contribute, but people weren't contributing, so I had to fill these pages. But it went well. But once we started blogging, then I made some part of my audience mad, the people who love holding papers, and it's usually the older people, and the advertisers, because this was the only affordable way they could advertise to the community, because most businesses in the community only serve their community. So they were a little upset. But blogging gave me a much larger audience because now it's electronic. Now it can be distributed through Twitter and Facebook, and the Chester Facebook community. It's our water cooler. As much as I hated Facebook in the beginning and wouldn't sign on, once I did for years, and every end of the year, I do stats for the year. That's the only time I really look at stats on the blog. But, it's been 16, 17, since 2010 on the blog. For 8 of those 13 years, 95+% of traffic to the blog came from Facebook. So it's a love-hate relationship I have with Facebook.
I hear you.
So it was through, just being connected to Chester continuously since 2006 and following some of the issues that people, it makes their head spin now, like the sale of the Water Authority or Delcor, or issues with Covanta or waterfront development, housing. I mean, Deshong Park, all these issues that, if you dived in now, it's too much, because if you wanted to understand the core, you'd have to go back 5, 6, 7, 10 years. I was there, when these issues that we're still facing today, began. So it gave me a great basis to get into government with, being familiar with the issues, the players, and even solutioning them in my mind. There's nothing, I never write about a problem that I don't at least have a solution to, even if it's my own solution. I'm not a reporter. I constantly say what my blogs and what my paper basically was an opinion piece. Here's what I think. Now, some people were following my train of thought and others resisted, and that's the good part.
Yeah.
I loved having the opportunity to blog because it gave people an opportunity to respond. You have the comment section. Unfortunately, people prefer not to comment publicly, and that was quite a surprise.
I was wondering, like you said, this writing adventure gave you a lot of opportunity to really get familiar with the details of the inner workings in the city, and it also seems like it would set you up now to have an engaged, I don't want to say base in the way that we typically think of base, but at least engaged, people who are aware of the issues and are interested in discussing it. Is there any way to harness whatever you call a blog audience? Is that a readership? I mean, how can you, and like you said, people can agree, people can resist, dissent, have alternative, perspectives, but how can we use that interest to help us be more in it together and explore more of, like, what does it mean to be in it together? What does that look like? What does that sound like?
You're sort of making...
That's a huge question.
No, I get it. But I just want to roll back a little bit, because
Yeah.
you're sort of making an assumption that is an easy assumption to make.
Okay.
It's one that I made when I created these platforms, and that is what I write on, about, from this community will be consumed by this community. If that were my mantra, I failed miserably. So as much as I had a huge reach, it wasn't to the audience that I really intended my content to reach, and that's the people here in Chester.
Interesting.
The people who really consumed it and really enjoyed it and really supported it were the people who were either from here and have moved away and are curious what's going on in their hometown, or our neighbors from surrounding communities who have finally got a authentic perspective of what's going on in the city of Chester, that they're not reading in papers, or if they are reading in papers, they're now getting my opinion of a guy who lives here about what's being written in Chester. So it's not an easy transfer of this platform going out to the community. Mm-hmm. But what is important is my consciousness of communicating to a community like this. 20 years ago, you would just buy a Delaware County Daily Times. 99% of the people knew what was going on because they bought the paper or shared the information in the paper. When the paper is now $2.95 an issue, nobody's buying that paper. What is our water cooler? How do we communicate in Chester? It's Facebook. There's no doubt about it. Facebook is the water cooler of the town. But as much as Facebook casts a big net, it has a lot of holes in it. So each community has their own way to be communicated to. So one of my objectives is to plug all those holes. Some people still love that newsletter format. Some people want to go online.
So you plan to continue with this?
I plan to continue to communicate to people. It won't be the opinion piece like I do on blog. I've cut that down considerably, because if I shared what I know, I'd probably be thrown into the Delaware River. And it's not about that anymore. But it is important that people have a consistent frame of mind about what's going on in Chester, to get educated on the issues.
Yeah, and stay engaged.
stay engaged. But the real challenge, not just for me, but for anybody in communities, is what is that platform in which will engage everybody? And my answer is clearly, it's not just one platform. I mean, for some people, it's got to be, we're coming out to your neighborhood, or you come to my city hall, or we do programs like this. I shouldn't even say or, and we put up flyers, and we do blog posts, and we get with the influencers in all these platforms and feed this data, this content to them so they can get it out to their audiences. So it's got to be a real multi-pronged attack in order to get a single message through an entire community that engages in these things.
It's kind of crazy, isn't it?
It's crazy, and it's still uncharted territory. We're going to have to figure this out.
So since we have the camera on us and we're on the show, what would you like to say about positive shifts that people who live in Chester can, or Delco, can lean into for more equity, more justice?
Yeah, the way business is going to be done in Chester with regard to equity and justice has just changed as a result of this election. Many would say I'm not a politician in the sense that I just don't have that political pedigree. I don't have many years behind me in the political world. However, office politics is politics, and I've worked in some pretty big organizations where, politics is played every day.
Yeah.
But government is a little different. However, as mayor, I can finally get into the position where I can confront these businesses that need to be doing more, in the city of Chester. They're in the city of Chester now. Some of them do business in a big way, some of them do business in a little way, but the engagement with the entities, whether it's a business, a nonprofit, a hospital, a university, how they engage with the city in the past, just wipe it clean, everybody. We're going to start new. We're going to take Chester from where it is now in the state that it's in, and you're dealing with a new entity now. I'm not comfortable with some of the decisions that were made in the past. I think the ask, for the most part, from city government to entities that could help us has been minimal at best and under-asked, for sure. So we're shooting for the stars. We're going to, sit down with people on a regular basis and say, this is what the city needs. You only have to ride around the city and see what the city needs, but we have to target exactly how to match up a need with, an entity that can fill that need and do it very efficiently and measure, so you're doing it effectively, which you can't manage what you don't measure.
Yeah. And for people who live here, and you're going to be a leader for people who reside here, it's important for, I think, every one of us to somehow show that we are here for each other. I know there can be a lot of negativity when things aren't going well, right? There can be a lot of fingers pointing, which is kind of a natural reaction.
As they should.
To find the cause, right? Yeah.
And accountability.
And accountability. What else?
I can tell you what I hear a lot, since election time. Got a lot on your shoulders. You got a big job to do. I'm like, I know it's a big job. I'm not shying away from the job. But
you're not going to do it single-handedly.
Absolutely not. So let's get back to the community itself. The community is definitely going to be overtly invited to join the process. Many people in this city know what needs to be done, and they even have answers to how they'd like to see it done. But they don't have a seat at the table. They don't have much of an opportunity to engage with elected officials. For instance, we have city council meetings every couple weeks, and there's a public comment section. And people come not so much with recommendations, but more complaints. A lot of them are personal, it's affecting them or their neighborhood or a family member. They come question and answers. They want answers. Well, it's public comment, people. It's not a Q&A session. But because it's the only opportunity people have to be in front of elected officials, you almost have to allow them to ask their questions.
And it gets frustrating even then.
It gets frustrating on both sides. For those of us sitting up there who know that this isn't the place to give you an answer because it might require some research and some digging, but by the same token, you're getting frustrated because you've asked this question a million times. And what's frustrating for me as a new guy on board, that person who's asking that question is one of probably 50 people who have that same question. And if I'm only answering the question of the person sitting at the microphone, what benefit does it do to the other 49 who needed a solution as well? So we have to be better at the intake. Like, we just need, in the simple terms, Philadelphia has a 311 number, right? Mm-hmm. You call 311, you can talk about anything, whether it's a clogged drain in the street to a tree falling to a nuisance neighbor, but that gets tracked. And you only have one person to call or one number to call. Here in Chester, people will call City Hall, they'll call 15 people, they'll finally get to me, and this is real talk here. They'll finally get to me, I'll start solutioning their problem, not knowing that 2 other people are also solutioning their problem, and we haven't talked. So those type of systems to help people communicate with us is very important to put in place.
You're going to streamline?
We're going to streamline that, like almost immediately. I mean, these are decisions that are going to be made this summer. I've got the luxury of 7 months starting today before we take office. There couldn't be a better time to get all this out, but to bring community people in, either to join committees in areas that they're interested in, is paramount. You being a Philadelphian, Philadelphia city government is full of committees. There's probably 25 committees.
Yeah. I'm new because I was a resident of Delaware County up until 2.5 years ago. But it's another topic, Philadelphia. Be thankful. Just be thankful.
Time for one more, right?
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Yeah, because I got to go somewhere.
Yes, okay.
Okay, so.
Well, I was going to do a little practice.
Practice?
Yeah.
Like T-ball?
You're here for 10 minutes more? It's 10:40?
Yes.
Okay. A short little practice.
Okay.
Just because you're talking about communication and people being able to express themselves and having someone listen to them and really hear them, and then people also getting the opportunity to speak up about what they care about and get involved with. So it made me think about mindful communication. So I just want to introduce the concept of like what is mindful communication? How can we all be more mindful when we communicate back and forth?
I'm looking forward to this. As a communicator.
Yes. So when we're having a conversation, or we're having an argument, or we're having a flat out battle, right? And it can happen really quickly, can escalate really quickly, because our emotions are really powerful. And our thoughts are real. Well, they seem real in the moment, but our heads are full of them in the moment. We can actually just, again, use the power of the pause. And just by pausing and just kind of noticing, okay, I'm yelling, or my voice is louder than normal. My chest feels tight. I have this thought in my head like, wait, I want you to, listen, or stop, or I no, I'm not. This is not, they're wrong, you're wrong, whatever the thoughts that you actually hear are. You can detect the emotion, frustration, exasperation. It could be anger. We can pause and we can capture all that. And then we actually need a little bit of an anchor, just like a boat, out in sea. There could be a big storm, or it could just be a calm day, but there's some wind, there's some turbulence in the water. The water never stops moving, so the boat's never completely still. That's impossible. But we can anchor ourselves so that we're not carried away by whatever's happening, by the waves. And when we're in conversation with someone, we're giving off our waves, they're giving off their waves, and then that's creating additional waves. It's just the nature of it. So we can use something like our breath. So wherever you are right now, you can just actually notice, where do you feel your breath moving in and out of your body? It could be your nose, your chest, your belly. And then just connect to that felt sensation of the breath moving. You don't need to work, no need to breathe. And that can give you some space to hold the difficulties, the challenges of the moment, the conversation. And then here are a couple questions. Once you feel like you've got some stability by really connecting to that felt sensation of the breath, right, and using it like your anchor, you can ask yourself, what do I need? And you can listen. You can ask yourself, what do I want? And then the other person that you're communicating with, what does he or she or they need? What does he or she, they want? And just sitting and just contemplating for just a couple of moments. And then see if you can notice any commonality. Even if it's just very basic, we both want to be happy. We both want food. We want to be safe. We want a roof over our heads. And just see if that's helpful for re-entering the conversation with a bit more awareness of the greater perspective instead of just our contracted perspective. So, a little mindful communication tip. And we are getting close to the end of the show, sir.
All right, hold on. See, it took me through another exercise that reminds me of, situations in my life and relationships, just, those human relationships, one-on-one relationships, whether it's the significant other, the wife, the whatever. And we get into those shouting matches. I mean, oftentimes they escalate to a point of no one's listening to anybody. And to your point that you have to stop and consider, what does the other person want? It's when we're in the midst of those shouting matches, neither party wants to be shouted at, first of all. And secondly, usually you just lost control of what everything was about that got you to the point of just out of controlness. So I guess as in boxing, the referee comes in and he says, all right, go to your corners. Let's regroup. The battle may not be over. Maybe we need to come back to the center ring and, engage again, but engage with the idea that, what is it that the other person wants? Why did they start it in the first place? It wasn't to send you off to the moon in a rage. It was to come to some agreement or conclusion or something.
And don't we all have the right to advocate for what we need and what we want in addition to what we know other people want and need? I mean, we have that right. We all need to have our needs met, but we're in it together. It's my needs and wants and your needs and wants together. And I appreciate you so much being the mayor-elect, because you really seem like a full human.
Oh, yay. I changed my batteries this morning.
Doesn't he? You seem like just a human being who understands what it's like to live and breathe, in a city that you are passionate about and that you really care about, and that you're not trying to just lead.
Yeah, and to that point, there's people out there, who, especially in a city like Chester, they love conflict. It's engaging, it's amusing, it's expected, and that was one of my challenges coming into government, because you come into government through a campaign. And campaigning and governing are two different things. Campaigning is about, especially if it's competitive, it's about the contest. It's about being loud and bodacious and sometimes even challenging, one-on-one the opponent. But then once you're in government, it's all about cooperation and coordination and a more leveled, mindset. And I learned very quickly that the combative me during a campaign was what a lot of the people who voted for me expected to continue once I got into government. They may not have liked the current administration. They continued to want to see me confront, combat, get in their face, be loud. And when I wasn't, it was, oh, that guy's drunk the Kool-Aid. He's one of them now. And I accepted that, because I wasn't going to change my way of getting the job done to appeal to my audience. But then another campaign came through, and that's the one we just went through. Mm-hmm. And I could turn it up again. It gave me license to be that combative, loud, aggressive person, and now that's over, and they're going to see me roll back into that more human form that's going to get things done, because you can't get everything done with a fight.
No, but we can still fight, and we can be assertive when we combat. And assertive is different than being aggressive. It's different than being avoidant. It's different than being I don't know. I lost my train of thought. But we can just be assertive, where we are using our own powers of attention to be mindful of what's happening inside of us, what's happening around us, so that we can, without reactivity, we can actually respond, and we can choose what's a next sane step forward. And that might be
sane.
Sane.
Okay, I like that word.
Next sane step forward, and that is a way to take action and to keep moving forward.
This has been great. I needed this.
Thank you so much for joining the IT Show, for sharing about your path so far, about your philosophy, about who you are, just being real with us. I hope it inspires us to maybe let down our guards a little more, but stand firm in what we want and what we need as we consider the needs and wants around us. I hope that we can take more time to pause and harness our internal power for the highest good. And I wish you all the best with your next chapter. So thank you, everyone, for joining us. Peace out.